Hi, welcome to another episode of What's Up with DJ. My name is DJ. Each week, I bring you topics about current events, career development, holistic living, life hacks, and stories of inspiration and humor. So be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button, like or comment, and review the show. Your comments are encouraged and appreciated. I like to start each episode with a segment called What's Still Cooking? And it gives me a chance to highlight things that I may have watched, read, or experienced over the last week that still may be lingering on my mind. So, what's still cooking for me this week was Father's Day as well as Juneteenth. I've invited a guest to discuss Juneteenth further because if you haven't heard by now, it's now a national holiday. But I visited North Carolina this weekend to spend some time with my family, especially my father. And I want to give him a holla. Happy Father's Day, David Sr. If you visit my Facebook or Instagram, you can find the link to those profiles in the show description. By the way, I posted a pic of my father and me breaking bread at a restaurant in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, born and raised. Just want to say happy Father's Day to all the active fathers out there. So, the versus battle between rappers Eve and Trina, people are calling it the versus battle, a legendary versus battle. The two were beamed in live from their respective cities. Eve, who was broadcast from London, and Trina, she was in Miami. The female MCs performed hits from their catalogs. The night began with DJ Nasty playing a tribute to Tupac to honor him. This would have been Tupac's 50th birthday. His birthday was June 16th. Well, it wasn't long before Trina hopped on stage and immediately jumped into her 2014 hit, The Baddest Bitch. Eve followed up with her 2007 hit, Tambourine, which was produced by Swiss Beats. I love that song. As the night continued, Eve presented featured guests like Alicia Keys, who performed Gangsta Lovin', Kelly Rowland, who performed Like This, and even back in the day, she went and got a group called City High, and they had a hit back in the day called Caramel. It was like a remix of a song. The viewers nearly lost it when she performed Let Me Blow Your Mind, Love is Blind, and Who's That Girl? Trina performed Here We Go, Pull Over, Whoop Whoop, Pull Over That Ass Too Fat, and Single Again, and even brought out Trick Daddy as a special guest for the hit Nan. During the show, Missy Elliott was honored by both women. Trina performed 1 Minute Man, and Eve performed For My People and Missy Elliott's hit Hot Boys. After the event, Missy Elliott later tweeted, I wanted to say this. I am humbly grateful because I've been on a lot of artists' verses, and I want to thank those amazing artists who believed in me as a writer slash producer or just as an artist. I love y'all for the love you've shown me. Yeah, that's really nice. The versus battle concluded with a friendly matchup with Trina and E to lit, performing to Ludacris's remix "My Chick Bad." Trina dedicated the evening to all the females in hip hop and took a moment to release her new single, Receipts. So Trina versus battle in the Eve and Trina versus battle. You can see that. I'll leave a link in the description. You may want to check it out before they take it down, as you know. But let me know what you think about the Eve and Trina versus battle. And also, let me know about what you think about the upcoming versus battle between Bow Wow and Soja, which will take place on June 26th. Again, check out the description so you can leave your comments, which will be read and I will reply to you. So, for our main topic this week, the Senate, and actually it's been passed into law by President Biden that we have another federal holiday, and that holiday is Juneteenth, and which is what it is. I think it's two words put together. It's like June 19th. Those two words put together. And it's been almost 40 years since the last federal holiday was created, which was the day we honor Martin Luther King, or Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that was created in 1983. But we're about to get another one. Well, we have another one. And if you are one of the roughly 2 million federal workers in this country starting next year, you can expect an extra day off for that federal holiday. Thank you, because I'll benefit from that, you know. So there are currently 10 federal holidays that we recognize here in the United States, but we likely so June 15th, the Senate passed a resolution establishing Juneteenth or June 19th as a national federal holiday. And Juneteenth, of course, celebrates the end of slavery in the United States. President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, but it will be another 2 years and a half before the last remaining slaves in Galveston, Texas, which is a island off of Texas, to finally learn that their freedom on June 19, 1865, which is the day that enslaved Black people were actually freed by the Emancipation Proclamation. I think I'm saying that correctly. And that I'm getting some of the dates confused, but the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863, but the people in Galveston, Texas didn't get the word about that until June 19, 1865. Dang. So the word Juneteenth is a portmanteau, a blend of words of June and 19th combined to create a new word, which is Juneteenth. So these things has all kinds of implications. And our guest this week is Jacqueline F. Fuller, a communications professional and freelance writer for the Washington Informer newspaper, covering religious news in the African American community. Jacqueline also is an alumnus of Marymount University with a degree in communications. In 2016, she was acknowledged by the Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington as an emerging leader for her work in religious communications. She has worked for various nonprofit organizations in Washington, D.C., and a member of numerous professional and community organizations to include Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, National Association of Black Journalists, Society of Professional Journalists, and Religious Communicators Council, and served as their national president from 2019 through 2021. Thank you, Jacqueline, for joining me on the show. I call her Jackie. Hey, Jackie.
Yeah.
And I don't know, good news, bad news. Some people, it seems to be bittersweet in a way.
Bittersweet, exactly.
And one of the things that you had sent me an article, and I thought this article was so interesting because it was pointing out some of the factors that or I would say implications maybe, that instead of getting some of the things that I think would help African Americans, the article was saying that what the Senate and the House and the President Biden actually gave us was a whole bunch of white people a day off.
Yeah, it's interesting because even like in meetings and things I've sat in, where it's like, white people present, that's what people were saying. Yeah, I get a day off. It was like no acknowledgement about why
Slavery
is Juneteenth. And it's really, it's really, I don't want to say disturbing because again, they don't know, but it's really uncomfortable. It's one of those meetings you sit in, you're like,
yeah, like, are we not really addressing the real, we're not having the conversation that we really wanted to have.
Right.
And we'll get into critical race theory a little bit later, But the conversation that we really wanted to have was, this concept of slavery and the implications of slavery. We're still, suffering from this, from the implications of slavery, but we skip right over that and just say, hey, you got a day off. So, one of the things that I was saying to you was, isn't it interesting? Why did everyone unanimously decide that this is, and anytime, I mean, I'm glad that everyone decides, say, yay, let's do this, but it still makes you want to raise some eyebrows and say, okay, what is something else going on here? And
Right.
so what's the issue? I mean, that's the thing that people, are going to be asking. Okay, well, we gave you a whole federal holiday off. Now we have 11 now federal holidays. It's now, so why are you complaining? So this is something that could be asked by those our Republican friends, why are you complaining? We gave you another national federal holiday.
Well, to those individuals that think that way, it just goes, it shows you again how, again, they're insular. You have no concept of history outside your experience. I mean, the fact that this whole thing, I mean, it took, what is it? It took watchmen for people to even realize that the Tulsa massacre happened. And then people are even denying that until they started looking it up in Google. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, here we go. You didn't even know about Tulsa and you didn't know about Black Wall Street, all these things going on. You're still learning about it. And you're learning about all the other massacres that happened, all the riots that happened in the North and the South. And then here we go. Here we go. Now we have a Juneteenth holiday where you still don't really have an understanding of why Juneteenth is significant.
Mm-hmm.
You need to also ask the question with people always say who have that kind of thinking. You have not asked the question why you didn't learn that in school. And
right. Because I didn't learn it in school at all. Yeah. I mean, I never heard of Juneteenth until I listened to a Paul Mooney stand-up comedy. And he said, the joke that he said was that, I mean, it was something about, what's the golfer, Tiger Woods, and he was saying that, they was going to put Tiger Woods into a sex rehabilitation center.
Now, let's talk about the embarrassment. The embarrassment. Tiger Woods. All them white women that he fucked, they should get some dildos and fuck him. He's a little punk. Man up. Now they got him in a sex rehabilitation hospital. What the fuck does that mean? They're gonna cure him? Well, they better get rid of them white nurses because he'll fuck them. If they want to cure him, they better hire some black nurses. Better hire some black nurses. Because he says he only fucks black women the month of February and Juneteenth.
So they're like, what is June? So that's the first time I heard of Juneteenth. And I'm like, well, what is that? So I've been looking on. Well, oh, this is a thing.
Yeah, I think I found out about it randomly, just kind of, it was like a backstory maybe in my 20s because I knew people from Texas and they were telling me about it. And I just found it really interesting that, and I went to predominantly Black public schools, and we did not have the conversation about Juneteenth. Knew about other things in regards to Black history, but not Black Wall Street.
Not Black Wall Street, not Tulsa, what you just mentioned. These things are now being discussed because of the Juneteenth conversation. This is what this was all about, to get this conversation started, which is, I'm glad about that, but it's sort of is happening indirectly. But what people are afraid of, this conversation called critical race theory. Have you heard of it?
I've been reading about it since it's been coming up a lot in the news. The interesting thing is that this is not something that just popped up within the last year. Apparently, this conversation with critical race theory has been happening for over 40 years.
Okay.
But again, because of everything that happened in 2020, these kind of things come up again because people are looking for resources and techniques on how they should teach, discussion about race relations in race history, the history in the United States in classrooms and so forth. And so I guess my interpretation is that people probably have went to this particular reference to say this would be one avenue to do it. But it's really interesting. One of the reasons there's been a lot of opposition, and I've just reading things online, seeing how people are commenting, I noticed that a lot of white people are concerned that critical race theory teaches, I guess, non-white people.
It's going to corrupt their children's minds.
well, that and they have it's a fear that it will teach non-white people to hate white people. And I'm like, this goes again to how much they have no understanding of history outside of their experience. And it also reminds me of the whole Jane Elliott video. It's like, that there's all these atrocities that's happened to a group of people, and then you wouldn't want it to happen to you. So why do you think it's okay to happen to other people? So it's like, now you have to face reality. I mean, pretty much when you really look at a lot of American history, it's like, it's a myth. I mean, here we go, the manifest.
Yeah, a lot of our history has been whitewashed.
Right.
I remember in grade school, I can't remember what grade, I think it was 7th to 8th grade, and we were learning, taking U.S. history, and Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was being, he had like a paragraph or two. That was it.
Really?
In the whole book, and there was no mention of Malcolm X at all.
Well,
and the reason why it was so distracting to us, especially the African Americans in the class, because around this time, the movie Malcolm X was out.
Right.
And it was like, okay, we have this movie out talking about all these, how this, was a thing that happened in pop culture, and it was like not even mentioned in the U.S. history. I mean, it hadn't even been 50 years since Malcolm X had been murdered, so it was just kind of odd, but that's the kind of stuff that happens that throw off African, like that makes you feel like, wow, there's really a problem here when I can cut the TV on and see that all these historical things have happened, and they're not even in the history books.
And in history, even it's different state by state for how you learn about history. So, and I remember growing up in the early 1990s. One thing I have to give my mom credit. We went to a Black-owned bookstore, and they had books there that talked. You could buy books about you could get books about the history of or world history from a lens that wasn't of European thought or of the European experience. And I think that's one key thing people will have to, and I think about that now, people will have to seek that information. So when you're on your summer breaks, maybe instead of you just like hanging in the house, not doing anything, or it's like block time during the summer and say, these are and I know for some people they already do this, but for those that don't, block time during the summer to say, I'm going to read about the history that I did not learn in school. Use that.
Pick a subject, pick a person, and find as much as you can about that person.
Yeah, definitely. I think people right now should really read things around Black Wall Street and, of course, Black economic empowerment, economic justice.
Yeah, because you did mention you held the book up before we started recording the show about Dr. Claude Anderson on reparations.
Powernomics. This is an excellent book. I think Black people should definitely. Well, the funny thing is, I'm recommending this to my white friends too, so they could understand. And the white friends tell me, I got the Powernomics book. Still haven't heard. Like, you're probably the only one I've heard. Like, out of my Black friends that said I need to get the book, and that bothers me because I keep posting online to people. I'm like, you got this book to understand. Especially when you talk about in the political arena, because I read this book and I'm like, in observing in the last few years, I said everything he talked about in this book, it's actually like happening now. And if you don't have knowledge to know what's happening, you'll get sucked up in so much of the propaganda that's pushed out.
Right.
And stuff. It's like, and that's how I feel like with this last election. You get caught up in all the hype and stuff that's happening with the election, and then you see what's happening now, and certain groups are getting special bills passed, and we as Black people still aren't getting bills passed. And I'm like, This book literally talks about
all those things. Well,
And
I'm
he
going to leave the link
early
to that
2000s.
book in the description notes so that people can go to Amazon and download the book. I'm hoping that there's a Audible version of it. I love Audible.
But
They
you will read this book like that.
Wow. Okay. I'm definitely going to read it for sure. Even if it's
Yeah.
not on Audible, I'm definitely going to check it out. Join us next week for part 2 of our conversation about the impact of Juneteenth, national holiday. Jackie and I will discuss, and that is through a racial lens. That's what we're going to do, and that does cause some fear in people. And I think that really the truth of the matter is that the people who fear critical race theory the most don't even know what it really is.
Exactly.
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They're not focusing on the real issue in terms of, what he was trying to help African Americans with and try to help white people understand. That was looked over. It's now trying to take his story and the things that he tries to teach to undermine the conversation.
Exactly.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farm. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is a reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.